The main incentive for her to be in this conservatorship is to preserve the money-making machine that she is. That's why the judge agreed to it, in my opinion. It's capitalism. It's always capitalism. Hello there. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kristen. Here I like to talk about social and cultural issues through the lens of pop culture and public figures. Usually, but not always. Sometimes I do change it up. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my notes from the Britney Spears speech that she gave in court recently in regards to her conservatorship. I will also be talking about Britney's career and the events that led up to the conservatorship, as well as what a conservatorship is. I took notes off everything she said in it was like a 20 to 30 minute speech that she got to give to the judge. I looked over my notes and kind of pulled out the, I would say, 10-ish main points that I got out of what she had to say. So let's just get started. So I would say her primary thesis of everything she had to say was essentially that the control asserted by her conservators is too much. The management team exerts far too much control over her. They control where she goes, who she talks to, her phone usage, looking at bank accounts, voting, her birth control methods, everything is controlled. She also said that she feels she has been and controlled excessively by the conservators. She wants to petition to end the conservatorship. She does not want to be mentally evaluated again in order to be let go of this conservatorship, because she feels her performance over her long career is evidence enough that she does not belong in a conservatorship. Her argument has basically been how can I be this productive and make this much money and pay all of these people and still be unfit to run my own life? That doesn't make sense. And I agree with her. She shared that she's actually been retaliated against by her management team repeatedly whenever she has tried to advocate for herself. So she brought up a situation with her Las Vegas residency where she had just got back from tour and had needed a break, but was told essentially, no, you have to do the residency, so you have to start practicing now. So she did, and she was doing the choreography, making up the dances and teaching the dancers. And there was, I guess, a disagreement around one dance move that Britney did not think they should do. And the management team responded by accusing her of being off her meds and of not contributing at all in the practice sessions, which was not true. And in response to this, her therapist took her off the medicine she had been on for multiple years that had been working for her and put her on lithium, which she said made her feel drunk, unable to really speak up for herself or even think clearly. So that was one example of retaliation from the team where she didn't do what they wanted, and so they made her life worse for her. Another example is last year, after she had asked for changes to the conservatorship, I believe she either wanted to be let out or she was asking for her father not to return as conservator. She was put through 4 hours a day of testing, and then ultimately was told that she failed the tests and would have to go to this 4-month rehab program where it was 2 months inpatient, 7 days a week with 10 hours of programming a day, and then 2 months at this bridge facility. And since then, she's had 3 required therapy sessions a week and is under 24-hour supervision. And she says that these 3 therapy sessions a week, she requested for them to be put somewhere private, preferably in her home, but if not at home, somewhere that it's hard for the paparazzi to find her. But instead they put it in a very high traffic, highly publicized place where she's running into paparazzi after every single therapy session, and she feels really embarrassed, and she's been photographed crying multiple times leaving therapy. And she also says that this therapist's office really reminds her of the same therapist's office where she was by a therapist for years. So it's extra awful. And from what I gathered, she feels like she's been set up to fail, because if she doesn't go to these therapy sessions, she's going to be accused of being non-compliant and is going to face more consequences. But going to these therapy sessions is incredibly painful and difficult for her because she is harassed by the paparazzi, and this therapist office is triggering for her. That was 2 examples of retaliation that she faced. So she has said basically that she would like for therapy to be 1 day a week, not 3 days a week, and for it to take place in her home. And she would like to pick her therapist. She also wants control over her reproductive rights. She has an IUD in right now that she is not allowed to get taken out, and she would like to get married to her boyfriend and have another baby with him. She has shared that she is deeply unhappy, that she cries every day, that she can't sleep, and she thinks it's just ridiculous that she funds all of these people's livelihoods. She creates all this wealth for these people, and yet she's supposed to be mentally unfit. And it doesn't make sense. So that's like the main points that I got out of what she had to say. She had a lot to say, and she talked fairly quickly. So sometimes it was harder to understand her, but I think I got everything pretty much. And honestly, it feels like nobody helped her writing this speech at all. It feels like she's not really being given the support that she deserves, because I don't know. It doesn't sound like anybody proofread it with her, which I don't like. Let me give you a few quotes. This conservatorship is doing way more harm than good. I deserve to have a life. I have worked my whole life. I deserve to have a 2 to 3 year break and just do what I want to do. So she would like to stop performing, but currently the management team retaliates against her when she tries to take a break. She also said, I am tired of feeling alone. She said, I feel ganged up on and bullied and alone. She said, I would like for my boyfriend to be able to drive me in his car. So he's not even allowed to drive her in his car. She said, I don't feel like I can live a full life. I truly believe this conservatorship is abusive. I shouldn't be in a conservatorship if I can work and provide money and work for myself and pay other people. It makes no sense. I've worked since I was 17 years old. Considering my family has lived off my conservatorship for 13 years, I won't be surprised if one of them has something to say about me asking to end the conservatorship. So Britney has been suffering, and she has been manipulated and controlled and basically treated like a money-making machine for somebody. It honestly makes me think of that Black Mirror episode that Miley Cyrus was in. If you've seen that, I wonder if they were inspired by Britney Spears and her experience. But so now that I've shared what she had to say in court, I'm going to share a little bit about her career and what led up to the conservatorship. So Britney first got into the entertainment industry at age 8 when she auditioned for the reboot of the Mickey Mouse Club, but she was rejected for being too young. However, at this audition, she met Nancy Carson, who encouraged Britney and her mother to move to New York, where she enrolled in the Professional Performing Arts School. She got early work, including a musical, an appearance on Star Search, and some commercial work. Her Star Search appearance is where you can first see her real talent. When you listen to her sing, she sounds like a very well-trained singer, and she's only an 8-year-old little girl. It's astonishing, frankly, how mature her voice sounds. She got onto the Mickey Mouse Club after auditioning a second time in 1992, and she was on the show with like Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, all the child stars that grew up into adult pop stars that you know of. After the Mickey Mouse Club ended in 1997, she began working with producer Eric Foster White, who worked with her to train her voice to get that characteristic kind of like baby sound that she's very well known for. In the year 1999, after training for 2 years, she released her debut album, Baby One More Time, and it was wildly successful. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, sold 121,000 copies in the first week. Her single, Baby One More Time, was number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. She was the first new female artist to have a number 1 single and a number 1 album at the same time, the first new artist, male or female, to have a single hit number 1 the same week as the album debuted at number 1. The album spent 6 consecutive weeks at number 1 and sold more than 1.8 million copies in the first 2 months. By the 47th week of the album being on the Billboard Top 200, it was still at number 3 with 10 million sales in the US alone. She was the youngest artist to achieve a diamond certification by the Recording Industry Association of America, and in total the album spent 101 weeks on the Billboard chart. The tour for this album brought in $53 million adjusted for 2020 inflation and 1.2 million attendees across 56 shows in North America. That same year, while she was 17, she appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone wearing a bra and brief style underwear. This sexual betrayal of a 17-year-old was concerning, to say the least, and in my opinion kind of foreshadowed the exploitation that she would endure for the rest of her career. Her next album, Oops, I Did It Again, came out in 2000, selling 500,000 copies on day one of release. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 again, and it set a record of selling 1.3 million copies in 1 week, and it set the record for the first week sales by a female artist for the next 15 years. By the 17th week, it was certified septuple platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America, and yeah, this album was a wild success as well. The tour for this album brought in $63 million and 1.5 million attendees in Europe, North America, and South America. Her third album, titled Britney, came out in 2001. Like her other albums, it debuted at number 1, making her the first female artist to have 3 albums debut at number 1. The tour for this album was her highest grossing yet. It brought in $80 million and 1.2 million attendees. In 2003, her 4th studio album, In the Zone, was released, debuting at number 1 again, and she co-wrote most of the songs on this album and also co-produced it. It was certified double platinum, and she won a Grammy. This album gave another lucrative tour, bringing in $48 million and 600,000 attendees. And this tour was also about half the length of her previous tours, so that's why it only brought in like 48 million, as opposed to some of the higher numbers we saw on some of her other tours. Her next album, Blackout, was the first album that did not debut at number 1. Instead, it came out at number 2, and this was in the year 2007. Honestly, it was kind of a technicality that kept it from being number 1. The rules changed that year as to like what could compete for number 1 album. And so, because of the rule change, she was number 2. The release of this album, Blackout, coincided with public incidents that kind of started in 2006, really. She was photographed with her baby in her lap while driving and was seen almost dropping her baby, while walking and being harassed by paparazzi. And it was in November of 2006 when she filed for divorce from Kevin Federline. Then she spent, the next month or so partying pretty hard with Paris Hilton. So there's lots of pictures of her pretty drunk and sometimes not wearing underwear and things like that. And, she was just being kind of harassed by paparazzi at this time. In 2007, she checked in and out of rehab multiple times, and it was also this year that she shaved her head famously. A source, it was the tattoo artist who gave her a tattoo after she shaved her head, said that she shaved her head because she was tired of people touching her hair. So I think it was just a bid to get more control in her life. 2007 also had a custody battle between her and Kevin Federline over their kids. They had a 50-50 custody agreement, but she was involved in a hit and run for driving without a license, and she continued driving without a license after going to court for this hit and run, including with her children in the car. So, that obviously caused some issues between her and Kevin. And so they had like custody battles going back and forth that year. It was a mess. There were more incidents that happened like after the album came out. So everything I've just said was before the album came out. And then there was like, traffic issues, failing to show up to court, and child welfare investigations that took place. And throughout this whole time, the celebrity news industry was like fixated on her. They were just obsessed. Francois Navarre, the founder of X17, which is a paparazzi agency, said that in 2008, Britney was the most bankable celebrity out there, and she has been for the past year. And in 2007, she was on literally 2/3 of the covers of U.S. weekly publications. That's how important Britney was in the paparazzi industry. Francois Navarre reported actually that he could sell a photo of Britney for $10,000, 2 to 3 times what other A-list celebrity photos would go for. And with residuals, a unique photo of Britney would sell for $100,000 over time. That's how much he would bring in. So everything she did was photographed. She was, followed literally all of the time. It was probably hellish, honestly. Things with the paparazzi were so bad that when she was being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance, that ambulance was mobbed by paparazzi. It was that dangerous at that point. So after being hospitalized twice in a month, in February 2008, a judge granted her father a conservatorship, and it was supposed to be a temporary thing. Conservatorships are typically reserved for the elderly or people with debilitating diseases like dementia, or for people who have severe impairments that prevent them from caring for themselves. This conservatorship, while it was supposed to be temporary, was eventually made permanent towards the end of 2008 because they claimed Britney had early onset dementia in her 20s. Under this conservatorship, her father had full control of her estate and her physical well-being. Among his duties included negotiating business deals, selling her property, deciding who she can see, filing restraining orders on her behalf, tracking her purchases. A co-conservator, Andrew Wallet, was brought on to manage financial assets as well. Without her father's permission, Britney is unable to leave her house, vote, drive a car, get married, have kids, do interviews that are not scripted, speak publicly about the conservatorship, use her phone without monitoring, purchase anything, look at bank statements, speak to somebody without being monitored, see her kids, or hire a lawyer for herself. And if she were to do any of those things in that list without permission, she can be institutionalized by her conservator, which I've already mentioned has happened to her. It's highly unusual for someone who is as productive as Britney to be under a conservatorship. 2 months after her last hospitalization that prompted the conservatorship, she filmed a guest appearance for the popular show How I Met Your Mother, released a song for Womanizer 4 months later, and released an album, Circus. And this album debuted at number 1. And she had an 8-month tour for the album that brought in $198 million and 1.5 million attendees, which is more than any other tour she's ever done. So for somebody with early onset dementia who apparently needed to be cared for constantly, she sure was able to perform pretty highly and do her job pretty well, huh? Kind of weird, isn't it? Conservatorships are supposed to be for people who are not going to get better. It's really weird for somebody in Britney's situation to still be in a conservatorship. Since the issuing of the conservatorship order, she's released 4 studio albums, done 3 world tours, released multiple products, including a lingerie line and a perfume line, did a 4-year Las Vegas residency, was a judge on the X Factor, and has brought in over $100 million a year. Does this sound like somebody who needs to be in a guardianship to you? No. For most people, a year or so of erratic behavior, which is what she did, it would result in embarrassment, possible employment issues, financial issues, social difficulties, but it wouldn't result in you losing all of your civil rights. So then the question is, what makes Britney different? Why was she put under a permanent conservatorship because of bad driving, custody issues, public intoxication, shaving her head? Why would she lose all of her civil rights over that, you might ask? Well, I think it's because of how much money she made. If you were wondering why I took through the time to tell you how many millions of dollars each of her albums and tours made, this is why. Because I believe, Britney was literally a miniature industry. There were probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people literally making their careers off of Britney Spears. And someone who's that successful, who generates that much money, who is a micro industry in and of themselves, there's a lot of financial incentive in our capitalist system to make sure that person continues being productive and continues making money for all of those people. So, her management team, her support staff, her father, all of these people around her, they were all incentivized to find a way to try to control Britney so they could continue making their money. And the judge, who exists to preserve, American capitalist values, is incentivized to go along with that. To me and many others who support the Free Britney movement, this seems like a very disturbing case in which the value that a person possesses due to their talent and fame makes them uniquely vulnerable to exploitation. As an example of just how lucrative this conservatorship has been for the conservators, her father received a salary in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, in addition to a percentage of the revenue from her engagements, such as the Las Vegas residency. The president of the National Association to Stop Guardian Abuse, Elaine Renoir, has alluded to this financial motivation to keep up the conservatorship too. She's quoted as saying, "As long as Britney is bringing in so much money, and as long as the lawyers and conservators are getting paid, there's little incentive to end it. Usually the conservatorship keeps going until the conservatee makes a fuss or the family does." Britney Spears' brother said in 2020 on a podcast that she has always wanted out of the conservatorship, and that's been very frustrating for her. He said that while the conservatorship may have been necessary at first, like that initial temporary conservatorship might have been necessary, but it's not necessary now. Britney herself has been quoted in 2008 as saying, even when you go to jail, you know that there's a time when you're going to get out. But in this situation, it's never ending. It's just like the movie Groundhog Day. Sam Crane, the legal and public policy director at the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and a nationally recognized expert on the alternatives to guardianship, is quoted as explaining the difficulty that people face if they seek to get out of guardianship like this. He says, "You need to go to court and establish that the conservatorship isn't necessary anymore, but because you haven't recently had the opportunity to make decisions for yourself, it's extremely difficult to persuade a judge that you can make those decisions. Because people under a conservatorship don't have access to their own money, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to pay a lawyer to help with this. So even with the support of the conservator, Getting out of the conservatorship can take years, even if it happens at all. Britney Spears' conservatorship is a very public example of something that happens to Americans every day. While we don't have exact numbers, AARP estimates that as of 2013, there were around 1.3 million Americans in conservatorships or guardianships. While much of these function as expected, there is little court oversight into guardianships, and that makes of guardianships very, very possible. Incidences of financial abuse in guardianships are many, with little recourse for victims. Bernard A. Crooks, a lawyer, says that the system is underfunded. There's not enough judges who understand what to do and how to do it. There's not enough volunteers to do the work. And there's not enough money to pay people to do it on a compensatory basis. He indicates that courts often don't have the money for staff to oversee guardians and review their required reports. So even though guardians are required to submit records of everything, there's no one actually looking at the records. A shortage of judges to handle the cases of all kinds, including guardianships, also exacerbates problems. A big part of the problem, according to Bernard A. Crooks, is that you're dealing with the most vulnerable segment of the population, including the elderly and disabled who cannot stand up for themselves. So you've got a recipe for disaster, and that's what's happening in a lot of states. To protect individuals from being placed under guardianship or conservatorship inappropriately, alternatives to guardianship like supported decision-making agreements should be explored. We need to consider Britney's conservatorship fight and the Free Britney movement as a part of the larger disability rights movement, because this is a disability rights issue. And for more information on the Free Britney movement as a disability rights issue, I recommend Jessica Kellgren-Fozard's video. I will put a link to it, or put a picture of it up on the screen. And I would also recommend looking into John Oliver's Last Week Tonight episode about guardianship for more information. So hopefully this has been informative. A lot of this information is in an old video that I did about Britney Spears, but the audio quality is just not the same because I've recently got a mic and just gotten better at making videos. So I wanted to kind of try to redo it and also go over the more recent developments. My stance on this is that she should be let out of her guardianship. Even if she does need help making decisions and stuff like that, it's very clear that she is not disabled to the extent that she needs to be in a guardianship. And I would argue that even severely disabled people maybe shouldn't be placed in guardianships because there's so much room for abuse. It just doesn't seem safe, and it just seems not right to violate people's rights like this. That's my opinion on the Free Britney movement. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. I make videos on Wednesdays and Thursdays usually. This is a bonus video. Please check out my Patreon, comment, subscribe, all those things. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.